This is an exclusive presentation of WOWO 1190 AM and 107.5 FM, Unholstered.
Here we go. Welcome back to another edition of Unholstered. Glad you're able to hang out with us. My name is Kayla Blakesley. I am one of your hosts here on Unholstered, and every weekend I sit alongside my co-host, Sophia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Rosales-Scatina. I am a captain with the Fort Wayne Police Department, and welcome to our show Unholstered, where you get an intimate look into policing.
Yeah, what's really cool about this show is that no topic is off limits. We say that almost every week. We talk about mental health, we talk about drugs, we talk about the border. I mean, we talk defund the police, all of it. No topic is off limits. If you've actually ever missed any previous episodes of Unholstered, you can download the Unholstered podcast pretty much anywhere you can download a podcast. Obviously, Sophia is here and represents the police side. I am here representing the local media side. And like Sophia said, we have teamed up together to share and tell all of the stories about policing that just quite frankly don't often get told. And Sophia, I hate the story that we have to tell today.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's awful. I know people who listen to my radio program during the week here in our community are really well aware of this story. But almost a week ago now, it was last Sunday, early Sunday morning, actually.
Actually, it was this past Sunday.
So tomorrow, this Sunday will be a week ago. Yeah.
Yes.
We had a 24-year-old officer, Shahnavaz. He was shot and killed during what I believe was a fairly routine traffic stop. He was wearing a vest. He was hit in the chest, but ultimately he succumbed to those injuries. I do want to, we'll touch on that in a little bit. It happened in Elwood, Indiana. It's just a really sad story. He was so young, early on there on the force. And I think it's already hard as a member of the community to hear about, the demise of a police officer. But I immediately, Sophia, thought of you. And I thought, man, I want to talk about this on Unholstered because I wanted to just get your reaction. I mean, how does that feel for you? Because, again, I know how it feels for me, just a member. And I don't even live in Elwood, Indiana, obviously. I live here in Fort Wayne. But, man, it's hard to put it into words.
It is, and it hits really hard. I think every officer, when we hear about these things, and especially when they're in our state and are close to our communities, we really just kind of reflect, because at any given moment, that could be any one of us. I mean, they always teach us there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop, but we do so many of them that, and when things don't happen, then it becomes really a surprise when it does. But in this instance, he was ambushed. I believe they had statements from the suspect that he was going to kill an officer if they ever pulled him over. And he did that. He didn't even have time to unholster his weapon. He was just ambushed that quickly. And it's, it's always something in the back of your mind, like, what would I do? He was newer. He was 3 months out of the academy.
Jeez.
And I really feel for that department because it's a small town. It's like, I think, 8,500 people. So I'm thinking, honestly, they probably only have a handful of officers. Yeah. So a hit like this is huge for them. And everyone's so close in those small towns. And that's what makes it really hard when you lose someone like that. It's hard enough in a town like ours that's larger, but I can't imagine like in those smaller towns. And it's just very sad because he was only 24 years old and had his whole life ahead of him and wanted to give back to his community. So it just strikes really hard.
I should say, too, you brought up the suspect, Carl Roy Webb Boards II. Mm-hmm. He was 42 years old. He has been taken into custody. But you mentioned the words routine traffic stop, and I'm actually the one who said it, that he was responding to a routine traffic stop. But to hear you say that no traffic stop is really routine in your line of work, does that bother you? When people like me, especially in the media, say a routine traffic stop? Because I know that's how it's been plastered all over the media. Yeah,
and I think it's just something that people say because they don't know what else to say. I mean, what are you going to say? The traffic stop?
Traffic stop? Just a traffic stop?
Yeah, just traffic stop. But I think when people get into the habit of saying routine, it's because it's, we're stopping people for speeding or we're stopping people for a light out. I mean, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. So it's not like I think where people get off that routine is where it's a criminal inside, or that it's so-and-so inside that's a felon escaping a warrant or, something like that. So I think people get off on that sidebar of thinking routine is just something we normally do.
Yeah.
And, they always teach us it's never routine, and never be complacent.
I feel like I want to try to take that word out of my vocabulary when talking about traffic stops.
Yeah, I mean, we just see it differently, but like I said, we say things because that's how we've always said them, and it's okay. There's no offense taken or anything like that.
I do want to talk a little bit about the gear. You're obviously the expert. I'm not, but there's been a lot of talk about Noah's gear. Like I said, he was wearing a vest. He was hit in the chest. He obviously succumbed to those injuries, and so now there's all this talk about protective gear and what police officers don't have or should have. Do you know kind of what's going on in the scenario with his vest here?
So I don't know what type of vest they have, but I believe we're issued the 2A vest, which is the intermediate vest.
So there are multiple grades of
levels.
vests?
Yes. So our SWAT team has a threat level above because they're probably going into more situations where there are potentially more high-powered guns that are going to be raining down on them, potentially. What we see more in our line of work on the day-to-day is more of like a handgun thing. Just to see a rifle or something like that isn't a normal everyday occurrence, but we do see handguns every day. So we kind of go there. And those higher-level vests are a little more cumbersome, too.
So you can't move as quick?
Yeah, you can't move. They're heavier.
Okay.
And they're...
Listen, I have put on the vest that you wear.
They're not comfortable.
No, they're not. And they are heavy. And I can't imagine running in them, sitting in them all day. I don't know how you wear yours in here all the time.
Yeah.
I can't breathe in it.
And you just got to weigh that. I mean, if an officer really wants that, they can probably go and get that or request that. Most of these vests are paid with government grants. And every department has an opportunity to apply for those grants.
So wait, let me ask you. So you said you wear like a 2A is that level of a vest?
Yes. Threat level 2.
How many levels, I guess, are there, and what do they go up to?
I believe there are 3.
Okay.
But
again,
I am not the expert on the vest, though. I'm just kind of thinking in my back of my mind.
Well, this is new to me. I guess it is kind of a common sense, of course thing, but I personally have never sat back and really thought about it. Like when you mentioned the SWAT team, I'm like, well, of course they have a higher grade vest, but I don't know. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, and more recently, we were able to obtain through, again, a government grant, we have steel plated vests that we can put over our vest that we're wearing. If we know that, say, we're going into like an active shooter where there's a rifle that's present, we have steel plates we put over our vest to protect our vital organs that will withstand a rifle round. But again, those are so heavy and so cumbersome. There's no way we could wear those all day. Every day.
So in the case, though, of our officer here in Elwood, he probably had on just your standard, again, potentially 2A as it's called.
Yeah, and I also heard that there were 36 rounds shot. So
whoa, I did not hear that number.
Yeah, because I believe the man was armed with an AK-47. So
he didn't stand a chance with this vest, then, essentially, right?
No, I mean, not with that many rounds going through. Because even a vest, while it can withstand several rounds, it's not going to withstand 36 if they're all in that vest area. The vest will give. It's not a complete protection.
Yeah.
It just increases your chance of survival. And they're shown effective to work. Police, killings have dropped dramatically once the vest was introduced, and technology is getting better, and it'll get better in 10 years. It'll be better than it is right now. And right now it's better than it was when I came on 28 years ago. They're a little more comfortable. Not the best, but they're better than what they used to be.
You just mentioned it. You've been with the Fort Wayne Police Department 28 years ago. I try not to reveal that about you, Sophia. You revealed
I came on when I was 2, so only 30.
But I know you spend a lot of time on the streets and working the streets, and that's really where a lot of your heartbeat has always been. But with that being said, did you do a lot of these traffic stops? I mean, walk me through a typical traffic stop. I mean, do you walk up to every car concerned or thinking, I mean, I know you think everyone's carrying to some degree, but to be carrying an AK-47, that's not typical.
It's not. You go into these situations thinking, that yes, this person is potentially armed, and why are you stopping them? Are you stopping them because they just left the scene of a potential crime? So you think there maybe already some laws have been broken? Are you stopping them for speeding? Are you stopping them because it's a warrant? It's a warrant subject. So there's different levels of your awareness of what you're stopping someone for and what you may encounter. But I don't know what he stopped him for. I don't know if it was speeding or light out or if he knew who he was or anything like that. But you walk up and you just constantly, your head has to be on a swivel because the threat is not only in that car, but everywhere around you. Because you never know anymore. Ambushes are up 115% against officers, and you just never know what or who is around the corner.
For Indiana or across the country?
Across the country.
Wow.
So, it's a constant level of awareness that never goes away. And it's just you get accustomed to living like that. And unfortunate as it is, it's just the reality of policing.
I don't know how you live like that. I've said this before on this show, but for folks who maybe have missed it, that was the first thing, one of the very first things when you came into the studio. I mean, we essentially sit in a square box,
right?
But one of your first things is you want to sit where you're sitting. And you made that very clear so you could still see the door. But I have my back to the door. I feel completely safe, by the way, especially when you're here.
Well, thank you.
But that was like the first thing. That's how hyper vigilant you are, even in our little old radio studio here on the south side of Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, I went out to dinner last night with a couple officers, and I think we were all fighting for the
for the seat where you can see all the exits.
And we're all like, who's going to get it? And then I relented. I'm like, okay.
But at least when you're with fellow officers, can you let down that hypervigilance, let down that guard a little bit?
Yes, because now I have 6 eyes instead of 2.
Yeah.
And, we're just all just hyper aware. And I guess it's just my place of operating at a normal level now. So it's not, to me, it doesn't seem unusual. To other people, it may.
Okay, well, you say operating on a normal level, but here's the thing. I feel like within just the past couple of years, Sophia, which is, is part of the reason why we created this show, there's just this drum, defund the police. We hate the police. Police are bad. Do you feel like, though, in the last just couple of years, you've had to heighten your senses even more because of some of that rhetoric?
I definitely have taken more precautions. Especially because, I'm a single mom, and I just take precautions with my family. Mm-hmm. I just want to know where they are all the time, who they're with, where they're going. I don't want to be over my children so much that they can't do anything, but I do want to know where they are and who they're with. I can't control.
That should all parents, police officers or not. Yeah.
But I have a different level of worry just because, and we were having this discussion this morning as I did some TV interviews for some things going on in the community. And we were talking about, because I was the former PIO, and how just people know me now. Mm-hmm. And they feel like we're friends. Yep. So they're just very friendly, and they kind of come into
almost too friendly,
yes,
right? Yep.
And they come into your space. Mm-hmm. And you take a step back and they come, and it's always that little cat and mouse game of like, okay, hold on. You're
too close for comfort.
Yeah. And they mean no ill intent. They really don't. But in my mind, I'm like, why are you getting so close to me? And you know me, but I don't know you. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a weird dynamic as an officer that so many people know who you are. And in turn, I worry about my family a little bit more just because people feel that friendliness to me.
That is so true, because when we launched this show, I remember, saying, a lot of you might know who she is. She's going to be my co-host, Sophia Rosales-Catina with the Fort Wayne Police Department. And a lot of people do know you or think that they know you from your time as a public information officer. Yeah. And everyone's like, that name's familiar. I know her. I've seen her on the TV. But you're right. They have that perception that they know you.
Yeah. And I think as I was talking to the media person, she said the same thing. She goes, I get that a lot. Yeah. And I'm like, it's like I said, most people have no ill intent. And it's 97% of people are just kind, caring, compassionate, loving people. And it's the 3%, though, that get me on guard.
It is always startling when people come up to you and they say, hey, KB, and they talk about your whole life to you. And I'm like, wow, no kidding. You know a lot more about me than I know about myself. Yeah. I do get that. But kind of bringing this back to full circle here to our officer in Elwood, I did mention defund the police, and we're talking about the protective gear that he has. I know you mentioned there are some grants that police departments can apply for to get these vests. But is that the only way you can get them? I mean, certainly, right? When you join the force, they at least give you the lowest grade vest, or how does that work?
Yeah, every department's different. I mean, we issue everything for our officers. And I will say...
at the Fort Wayne Police Department?
At the Fort Wayne Police Department, we issue everything to our officers. And I think we exceed the minimum standard.
What is the minimum standard, do you know?
Like a handgun. Yeah. And I'm assuming every department issues a vest. I don't know that for sure. There may be some, especially in more rural places, that don't. And, I was reading an article today, especially on these smaller departments. It's not that they don't want to be trained. It's not that they don't have a desire to be the best. But, nobody wants a tax raise, and training costs. Yep. Training has high costs. And
that's usually the first thing to go. I mean, when you scream defund the police, for Pete's sake, training's the first thing out the window.
And these smaller departments only have 3 or 4 people. So who's going to man the streets while people are gone at training? So there's just this push-pull dynamic on these smaller departments that people are just unaware of. And they really don't understand until you work at these small places. And, I really feel for them because, backups miles away.
Yeah.
When we were going to Montana, a couple weeks ago for the training, I couldn't imagine being an officer out there and making a traffic stop. I don't even know where your backup would come from. It was desolate for miles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're in trouble, you're on your own.
So I always say when people say defund the police, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. And if you listen to this program on a regular basis, you know this, you know what I'm going to say. But people don't know what they're saying when they say defund the police.
Yeah, I think people just operate on emotion, not fact.
Yeah, they do.
And, it's unfortunate because we can't even have a conversation about what may need to change, if anything, or just understanding what the law allows officers to do. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's
not
illegal.
Real. Yeah,
or it's illegal.
Right.
And like I said before on the show, violence is never pretty, whether we're the ones issuing it or somebody else. I mean, if we have to take someone down, it's never going to be pretty. It's not going to be John Wick taking down the bad guy in a, this cool manner. It's not pretty at all. And when you watch it on video, you can see that.
How come, Sophia, maybe this is a really dumb question, I'm not really sure, but how come sometimes I see police officers, whether it's county, city, or back in my hometown of Union City, Pennsylvania, they're in full uniform, some have vests on and some don't. Is it a preference whether or not you walk around wearing your vest?
Some may have it under the shirt rather than over. There's 2 options. I prefer mine over just because it gets hot in the summer and you can unsnap it in your car and kind of air it out. And some people prefer it under. It just depends on the preference, but you should always be wearing
Usually
one.
They're wearing them, right?
Yeah, usually they're wearing it somehow. And some of them fit really good, and you just can't really tell. And some of them...
Is that just in terms of trying to have a tactical advantage that, you don't know if I'm wearing one or not?
Some do. Okay. Some officers probably would use it that way. And others, just go for the comfort.
Let's wave a magical wand, because right now we don't totally have to get into this, but the House of Reps, they are debating some legislation when it comes to funding the police. And again, we don't need to get into all of that, but waving this magical wand, Sophia, if you could have a say in what we do or do not do, I mean, where would you start? Would you start with hiring more officers, or would you start with more training? Would you start with more gear? I mean, and in the perfect congressional world of legislation, which will never happen, but I mean, what would be some of the answers to this problem of police officers being killed in the line of duty?
I think first and foremost, the rhetoric has to stop.
Yeah.
And that'll include our lawmakers in that.
Amen.
There are some that are spewing rhetoric that is deadly to my brothers and sisters, and that's unacceptable. You represent everyone in your community, not just who you think you should represent. And to say things that are, to me, abhorrent about my profession and about the people in it willing to sacrifice themselves for their communities.
It's repulsive.
It is. So I would start there. Let's stop with the rhetoric. The second would be is understand what policing is. We hold a class, procedural justice, and it's a 4-hour class for community leaders to come into and understand what we do, why we do it, the history of policing, and use of force, what that entails, and then you become the police officer, and then you're thrown in the situation where you have to make the decision to shoot or not shoot. Mm-hmm. And people walk away from that with a better understanding. Like I said before, I don't need you to be on my side all the time when things happen. But what I do need you to do is hold space for me until all the information is released, all the videos released, everything's released, and you understand what use of force entails.
Yeah.
Because I think people have this complete misconception on TV police shows about what we can and can't do, when we have to read Miranda, when we don't have to read Miranda. And they just have no understanding of anything. They're just going on what they think is true, and that creates problems. And if we could have a real conversation about that, like we do on this show, I think we'd be better served with that.
Yeah, but I don't know how you get people. I don't know how you get individuals to come on board with that. You know, for example, changing rhetoric. I completely 100% agree with you, which I did tell you we were waving a magic wand. So there is that. But I don't know that that'll ever happen, to be honest. In fact, you know, you bring up our lawmakers as well and how they need to change their rhetoric. Personally, I think some of them have taken a hold of that defund the rhetoric too, and they've used it as an opportunity to push what they want to push and to push their narrative and their agenda, and therein lies the rub.
And I'm not saying that officers don't do things that they shouldn't do.
But we all do things. Everyone in every career
I totally get that, but let's take them on a case-by-case basis and not blacken the eye of the entire United States policing system because a few people have chose to do things that they shouldn't have done. And it's no different than lawmakers. I know plenty of lawmakers who have screwed up, but I don't blame every lawmaker.
We like to drag them through the mud for things they did 20 years ago. I mean, come on now. Yeah. We all do it.
You know, I think it's just, for me, I want to just have conversations like we have here. And I'll do that with the general public. Just come up and talk to me. I think any officer is willing to have that conversation, really. I mean, to set the record straight, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation.
Okay, I'm dying to ask you this question.
Oh, boy.
As we're nearing the end, I can't believe it, as we always run out of time here on this show. We're talking about bulletproof vests and how some are higher grades than others, and some can withstand certain firearms and some can't. Have you, whether it was in training or out in the field, been shot while wearing your bulletproof vest?
No. Thankfully,
do people ask you that kind of question all the time?
They just ask me if I've ever been shot or shot someone.
Well, I mean, there's a big difference between being shot and then being shot through a bulletproof vest.
Yeah. I have never, thankfully, I don't know that any of our officers have, that I can recall, been shot with their vest here in Fort Wayne.
I'd be curious. I mean, certainly it's still got to leave a mark.
Yeah, it will leave a huge bruise on you. It may, depending on the size of the round, break your skin. But ultimately, if it's been taken care of properly, because you still have to maintain those. If you sweat a lot, you have to make sure that they dry out. You have to make sure, there's still means to take care of those things. And you have to make sure that they're replaced because they don't last forever.
How often do you replace yours?
About every 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Academy is really good at keeping up on that and getting them replaced as needed because, as Academies graduated, everyone's on a different year of replacement. So it just makes it easier.
So you kind of get probably a new batch coming in
every year. We get a new batch. Every year we have in-service where they take us out, get us measured so we're properly fit for the new vest. And they've come up
each vest is measured and fit to you?
To the officer.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And that's, you have to, because everyone's so different. Size-wise, women versus men, Okay,
this is really bad. I don't know. I'm envisioning like a life vest. You buy you get the small, medium, or large. You pick from the small, medium, large, zip it up, and you got what you got.
Yeah, so no, they take like a small, medium, large, and then they'll say take off 2 inches, or because they're standard sizes, or you'll get a bigger size, and they'll cut them to the officer's specifications.
I did not know that. I had no intention of really going down this rabbit hole of bulletproof vests.
Yeah.
But truly, that's how uneducated I am about it. So certainly I can't be the only one.
No, I'm sure there's plenty of people. You're not in this line of work. Why would you be educated on it?
Right. Just like you probably don't know all the different kind of microphones that
absolutely
we have in this studio, right? Well, Sophia, like I mentioned, we always seem to run out of time so quickly on this show, but just kind of bringing it back to the beginning. I mean, this latest death of this police officer in Elwood, I think I said in the beginning, there really are no words. And to top it off, you came in here actually with stats about police officer shootings thus far that we've already had. And it's staggering to me.
It is. And, in the week that Officer Shahanavaz died, there were 5 officers killed in the line of duty from Sunday to Sunday.
That week?
Throughout the nation, yes. So it's a growing trend. I mean, not all by gunfire, but still, they're out sacrificing for their communities. And I just want to say my heartfelt condolences to this officer, his family, his coworkers, his friends, because this is a hard hit, and it deeply wounds me. as another officer who works in his state. I didn't know him, but in this world, I feel him. So I feel for his family and his friends and his colleagues, and I just want to extend my deepest condolences to him.
Have funeral arrangements been made, or will the Fort Wayne Police Department, did they take part in the proceedings for that?
Usually we'll take our pipe and drum band down, and because it's the proximity of this to our city, I'll be going down as well for the funeral.
Well, Sophia, really well said. Like, I wanted to get your thoughts and your just human reaction. I also say this all the time, but sometimes I think we think police officers aren't human and that they're robots and they don't feel like we feel. So thank you for sharing. I'm with you. My heart, my prayers go out to his family, his friends. It's horrifying to me. I feel bad for saying the word routine traffic stop all week long while talking about it in the news. If you've missed anything on this story, we actually have on the radio station that I work at during the week, WOWO.com. We've got tons of information there. It's actually a wild, awful story. To read through the whole thing in the police chase. If you want to check it out there, you can. Next week, I know we are going to touch a little bit on human trafficking, sex trafficking. There's so much I want to dive into that one, not only on a local level, but also on a national level. Yes, I kind of want to dip into the Jeffrey Epstein situation too, if you're okay with that.
We can talk about all of that.
All the things. As always, if you've missed any previous episodes of Unholstered, you can download the Unholstered podcast anywhere you download a podcast. Your town, your team, your topics. This is Unholstered.
Thanks for listening to Unholstered. Be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. And remember, you can listen every Saturday morning at 10:30 on WOWO 1190 and 107.5 FM.
Podcasts by Federated Media.